My name is Tope Ajayi. I'm a Senior Special Assistant to the President of Media and Publicity.
My name is Otega Ogra, the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Digital Communications and New Media.
Okay, pretty much 1 year of the administration, I would say the government has done well in terms of stabilizing the polity and also stabilizing the economy.
I totally agree.
Considering where we are coming from, there are a lot of fiscal headwinds that has really stunted the growth and the capacity of the state, of the country to be able to even meet its basic obligations. And I think the president took a right decision by tackling those fiscal issues headlong from day one. And there has been this argument whether he should have announced or said he was God or he's a God from day one.
Yes, I totally agree.
Truth of the matter is, the subsidy issue has been with us for over 40 years, from the 70s. And every government has struggled with it, even the military government. Or there will be minimal adjustment, or there will be pushback by labor, by students, by civil society, protest, government will buckle. But we kept piling up debt after debt to the point that the states almost become comatose. So instead of kicking the can down the road every time, President Tinubu took a bold decision. Of course, such decision will always come with some inconveniences here and there and unintended consequences, yes, which is a bit of a rise in cost of living
and inflation
and the rest. But again, through the application of appropriate tool of fiscal and monetary policy, we can see that inflation is also decelerating. And by the last number released by MBS, it actually dropped by about 3%. It used to be from 40% to about 38 or 37% now. So I think before the end of the year, people will begin to feel the positive impact of some of these decisions.
So I think for me, it's instructive to note, and I'll use the Bulgaria example.
Yeah.
In the early 90s, I believe, Bulgaria went through a similar situation. Yeah. You know, they were part of the Eastern European bloc, and then they tried to move into the Western bloc after the breakup of the USSR. And I know back then, you used to have a lot of Bulgarian businesses in Nigeria, and a lot of them actually left Nigeria to go back to their country once that happened. A lot of businesses were state-owned, even the ones that were here and everything, and then they did a privatization exercise, removed subsidies on food, all forms of subsidies, food, electricity, fuel, and all those things. And I think for the first 4 months, they had a riot, and then the government buckled, reinstated some of those subsidies. But guess what? When those subsidies came back, the entire country, you know, after a couple of years, I think 6 years or so, was facing bankruptcy as a result of those subsidies. And then a new government came in, a new democratically elected government came in, and they reinstated, you know, the removal of all subsidies, and were very, very prudent and disciplined in managing their policies to, you know, mitigate the impact. Yes, people felt pain, but today Bulgaria is one of the success stories from the Eastern European bloc, now currently in Europe. Recently, they were added to the Schengen area, you know, of the European Union. And I'm beginning to say something similar in Nigeria. I mean, the president has said it, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has said it many times, that he knows this is not easy on Nigerians. I remember when Buhari wanted to remove the subsidies, President Muhammad Buhari wanted to remove the subsidies in, I think that was 2021, and labor unions stood up to say no, they couldn't remove it. The same way the labor unions, you know, blocked the sales of the refineries back then, without looking at the big picture. And 6 months after, the Buhari administration said in November that by 2023, middle of 2023, they would stop the subsidies. Then they went and applied for the World Bank, you know, loans and everything to help with the conditional cash transfers and all that. And I remember when President Tinubu got into power, you know, middle of last year, after announcing the subsidy removal, which by law was always bound to happen because it was not budgeted for, beyond that moment. And initially, when they wanted to do the conditional cash transfers, which was part of the things to cushion this, a lot of Nigerians shouted.
People asking what we 8,000, 10,000 do for families. Yeah.
And the government had to draw it back and revisit the social register to see that let everyone get a part of this and let them make sure that it's actually getting to those people that they need. But you see, that time lag also between when that was supposed to kick in and things should have happened affected the most underserved in society. Because they also inflation beat them harder than those of the middle class and the higher class because they had little income, to cushion whatever it is. And I see people complain that 5,000, 8,000 is not okay. But when you go to the woman selling kose or akara on the street
or
boli, that is more than enough working capital, for them to run their daily businesses and give them sufficient to take care of their immediate families. You see many stories, you hear of many stories from people who have benefited from these nano grants, saying how it has changed their fortunes. They're able to, work less, have time for the children to go to school, reduce the impact of, having to work with little to no capital on their businesses. So yes, I agree with you. The subsidies had to go, but Nigerians also need to, understand why these decisions are made. It's not every time, it's easy to be moved by what's the most popular persons or those with the loudest mics are saying. But at the end of the day, if you don't understand the impact or why this thing is being done, then, we just keep recirculating the same problems over and over again.
I also think there is a global dimension that is being ignored in all of this conversation.
True.
Of course, like you said, people with the loudest mic, they have a way of making everybody feel
and
that.
bad news sells.
Anybody, okay, America is in the news cycle now in America is about their election. Mm-hmm. A major talking point in the ongoing American election cycle is inflation.
Yes.
So their own inflation may not be as high as ours, but globally, virtually all the major economies around the world is dealing with inflation.
Especially since the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which disrupted global chains.
From COVID,
yes, that's
the global supply chain has not fully recovered. Then, while we are still dealing with post-COVID recovery, the Russia-Ukraine happened 2.5 years ago. So,
and more than 40% of our grains in Africa comes from that region.
The cost of living crisis is not a Nigerian problem. And I think it's important our people know that it is not that every part of the world, citizens of other countries around us and those around the world are enjoying while we are the only ones suffering. No. The issue is there are certain decisions that need to be taken today.
Yes.
For a better tomorrow. Otherwise, the president, it was a tough decision that he had to take. He had to balance, should we do what is right now?
For the future of our children and the country.
Or we should just paper over it like any other person and do a kind of cosmetic surgery or what I would call a window dressing to make everything look beautiful, when in reality,
to some people, they say that would have been the wise political decision. Subsidy has been a poison chalice for Nigeria. You touch it, then, it's almost as if, your government is anti-people.
Yeah.
But I think what the president has tried to do with his deft handling of the economy, yes, initially things looked rough and chaotic. But if you're looking at the results now, looking at how revenues have grown, looking at how foreign direct investments, FPIs and everything have increased to levels not seen before in this country, despite what we claim as economic challenges, then I think we should give credit where credit is due. This is an accountant who understands numbers, who is very meticulous in his planning. I mean, the same thing happened in Lagos. People had the same sort of complaints.
At the early part of his administration.
But over time, and because he's someone who believes in systems, frameworks, and processes, those things have lasted even beyond his administration in Lagos. And I think we're seeing...
And to even give credence to the reform that the president, particularly both on the fiscal and the monetary, if you look at the recent economic indicators have shown that the housekeeping that he has done in the last 1 year are beginning to show visible and concrete results. Like you said, revenue has gone up. By half year this year, we have almost made as much money as we made the whole of 2023. Before the president came on board, we were spending like 97 naira out of every 100 naira we made as a country on servicing debt. Today, that has declined to like 67%, and it will keep improving. Maybe by this time next year, it will have further declined to like 50%. And what that means, in real sense, is government now has more money to spend on social service.
True.
More money to spend on the people.
True.
Security, food security, infrastructure, and those things health. That will make life beautiful and meaningful for people. I always tell my friends, why do we all want to dapper, especially our much younger people? Why do we want to go to Canada? Why do we want to go to America? Why do we want to go to Dubai? Why do we want to go to Singapore? Oftentimes, it's not because good people are going there to go and pack money on the street. It's because of the quality of life, because of better infrastructure.
True.
So, we now have a government that is saying, let's begin to invest in those things. And it's easy to focus on the mundane, immediate needs. Food. Good food is good. Of course, we have to eat to stay alive.
This is very important.
We have to eat to stay alive. But what I always tell people is, the best money government can spend in terms of public finance is money that catalyzes the economy.
True.
That catalyzes growth.
True. And
it is capital expenditure that can make that happen.
Very true.
Investing in road, in rail, in port, in fiber optics, in electricity, in water, in irrigation dam, in pipelines. Nigerians just need to show more understanding. We continue to support this government. The president is a president that cares about the people. He loves the people. He will never do anything to make life difficult for his people. And no leader, at least no sane leader, we want to see his children suffer.
So that is. But I like what you said earlier on, and this brings me to the cost of governance. I remember sometime at the beginning of the year when President Bola Tinubu, gave that instruction that, if you don't have any essential foreign trip, it's cancelled. And the most important thing for me, and which made me respect him so more, was the fact that he started with his own office first.
Yeah. That leadership example.
It first cut the number of people that officially follow him for trips, to the specified number that he said. Every other person, you stay at home. And if you want to do anything on your own, it's not authorized by government, it's not paid for by government, you're on your own. And I also realized that, I was speaking to about 2 ministers and the chief of staff 2 weeks ago, and they said more than 80% of requests for official trips now, are cancelled.
Across MDAs.
Across MDAs, across the presidency, across the civil service. Mm-hmm. For me, that's very instructive. Yeah. But in some way, somehow, this do not get said as much in the public. I don't think you have an official car. I don't have an official car. Many other people, including some ministers, don't have these things. And it's a touchy subject. You come out to say it, a lot of people will say, oh, these people are being pretentious. I see them say when they talk about, salaries of people in the executive. I'm not talking of the legislative now, because they can set their own, a lot of allowances and things for themselves. But for the executive, it is set by the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Commission.
I think a lot of people have, of course, because before some of us got to have the opportunity to be on this side of government, to work for government, which is a beautiful thing, to work for your country. And some of us came from our private sector businesses and work. Now, I think that there's this notion that people have that people in government are making so much money, earning so much money. Until I saw my first pay, my first paycheck, I was like, how do people in government survive? Because really, all of us that have
jobs or
good business that we're doing or private sector job, someone like you.
I mean, I'm so shocked.
That came from one of the biggest.
I'm about to cut my coat according to my size.
So I'm sure you are earning far less than you were earning for at Boa.
Well, Nigerians will say God is in control.
so I was telling someone, okay, on the WhatsApp group, where people were making a lot of claim about how government officials, ministers, how they are enjoying at the expense of Nigerians. And I asked, and I posted on the forum that, how many of you really know how much a minister earns?
And this is publicly available
information. And this is, of course, this is a public information.
If you go to rfafc.gov.ng, you will see the latest.
And even the president, how much does he earn in a month?
But let's be frank, a lot of people think that aside what you have on the RFAFC website, which has not been changed since 2007, a lot of people believe that there are some other allowances that are not reflected there.
But there's none. Because all your salary allowances are computed. They are in what you earn. It's even your letter of apartment. So at the end of the day, by the time you bring everything together, for a minister, it's less than $1 million.
Interesting.
And these are verifiable
and facts. This is for the executive. I repeat, because recently judicial officers, their salaries were increased by significantly, because it was very important to also safeguard the integrity of the judiciary. For the legislature, I know conversations are ongoing with them. Recently,
but even at that, there's also a misconception about what National Assembly members earn.
Okay.
I think Ramfa came out to give the breakdown. In real sense, what a senator earns is about 1.1 million naira per month, including allowances. I think the debate has always been around their running cost.
Oh, I see.
So, they have a cost to running their office and their constituency offices. Okay, let's say, imagine a senator representing a senatorial district that is made up of like 6 or 7 local governments. That senator is expected, or House of Rep member, as the case may be, maybe a typical House of Rep district, we have like 2 or 3 local governments making up a constituency for a House of Rep member. Typically, a senator will have like 6 or 7, depending, or 8 local government, depending on the size of the state. States like Lagos or states like Kano with like 40 local government, or your state with like 30 local government. So if you're a senator from your state, you are likely going to have like 10 local governments making up your senatorial district. If you are from Kano State, you are likely going to have more than 15 or thereabout. Or
based on the number of the state.
Now, so you are expected as a senator to have a constituency office, maybe in each of the local governments. So that constituency office is meant to be run to be adequately staffed. Maybe you have an admin officer, you have 1 or 2 people there. You have to pay for the office, pay for your electricity bill. Maybe you have telephone. So really, if you really look at it, and this is me being honest, or maybe based on my sufficient understanding of how government works around the world, I always say, even before I came to government, that I think oftentimes we are too unfair or too hard on these legislators. No, I was reading a book, one of the literatures around the White House, gatekeepers, how chief of staff defines every presidency. So there was a kind of a review of about 15 presidencies in America. Ron Emanuel, the first chief of staff of President Obama, who was former mayor of Chicago. No, the first budget of President Obama was flipped, was tossed away. by the US Congress. And what was the issue? The US legislators were debating what we call constituency allowance here. That is always a sticky point. They call it earmarks in US. That is their own, we call it constituency allowance here. They call it earmarks. So there's a kind of money that is budgeted for every like legislators to take care of needs of their constituency, because it is believed they are the representative of the people. They know what their constituencies, the demands, maybe school, maybe road. So they are able to put all of those in budget. So it was then, and I saw that. So this is not even a peculiar thing to Nigeria.
So it's expected to be for specific purposes. So do you think this is how will I put it? Do you think this is a knowledge problem or an awareness problem? Because it builds on, you see, and people have made this complaint about even us as a government. It builds on all these agencies or arms of governments, to break down these things properly. Because in the papers, after Ramfak, mentioned that this is what's there, and you've had one or two members of the National Assembly come out and say, oh no, they take this jumbo pay home. So is it that they are not adequately informed as to what this additional pay aside their official pay is? Because I know we, the executives, don't get that.
Yeah.
We don't get any other allowances apart from the pay that comes in. But for the legislature, do you think it's an issue of, they are not, even the people collecting these monies,
they don't even know why they are not.
Exactly.
I would say maybe there should be a better understanding by the members, because for me, I would expect a senator or a House of Rep member to know the difference between your legitimate earning and your running cost. So a senator coming to the media to say he earns 21 million naira per month, I think you are just giving unnecessary ammunition to people to malign the institution that you represent. I think there should be a sufficient understanding. Maybe the National Assembly leadership should do better orientation for the members. Because really, and another thing is, running costs is like you as head of department at BUA, where you were head of corporate communication before your current assignment. You have an Impress account, a running cost for your office, that you retire every month or every quarter, depending on the financial regulation within the company. So usually, typically, there is an Impress account, like a running cost to run a department, that the head of the department manages. Every month, you retire it to the finance department. So really, running cost is meant to be retired, because it has to be receipted for. What did you use the money for? Because the money is supposed to be used for the purpose for which it is designed.
Unlike your salary.
Unlike your salary, and one thing that is. So really, I think the public need to be properly educated. And again, it's also come to the media too. The media also needs to. I always tell my friends in the media.
You are one of them.
Yes, of course. I'm working for government now.
Of course, I know. Because when you say, I'm still a media man.
Yes, I'm still for life now. I always tell them that the fiduciary responsibility of the media to the society, and it's journalism. It's journalism 101. You are supposed to inform, educate, and entertain. So that responsibility of giving the right information, informing the people appropriately, also educating. Education here means giving the right perspective, the right nuances to a story. So the media should also help the public to understand some of these things. Break it down for them. It's not enough to always want to. There's always this tendency or proclivity to always want to pander to populism. It's good.
It boosts sales.
It boosts.
You cannot sacrifice your fiduciary responsibility as the fourth realm of the state, in favor of clicks. But I see that happen a lot of times. You see, you bring government officials, you bring, policymakers, to your TV stations or your newspapers to do an interview, and you see the line of questioning, and most times I ask myself, are they doing what they're supposed to do? Yes, in a way, but also, like you said, they have to inform, they have to educate, they have to make sure that the public is knowledgeable on that subject matter. You see that lacking a lot of times. So you have an opportunity to interview someone. Why don't you use that opportunity to broaden the knowledge base of the people that
instead of just looking for sensation?
Instead of looking for sensational news, or I mean, that doesn't mean you cannot be, a right wing or a left wing, media organization. You can be at opposition to the government, but you still have to present facts to the people in a way that helps broaden national discourse.
I agree totally with you.
And that brings me to this thing about, the protests. Because everything we have said now, one way or the other, has or if affected the way the protests were perceived and the way the protests went and all that. And I remember weeks before the protests, the body language from the government was that this government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the Tinubu-Shettima administration, is not going to, impugn on the rights of
citizens,
any citizen, which is the right to freedom of assembly, the right to expression of oneself, the right to freedom of speech.
And even right to freedom to protest in the democracy.
Of course. But at the same time, a lawyer friend of mine told me one day and said, Tega, I hope you know that your right to freedom of speech is not absolute. The same constitution that guarantees those rights
also puts some limits.
Also puts limitations to them. For instance, if you exercise your right to protest, you should not use that to, block someone else's rights to go about their legitimate business. The two are...
Even, that is why even in a more advanced democracies or even more developed societies like US, UK, or anywhere in Europe, or North America, for example, you cannot go and do protests on the road.
I mean, it happened in Canada, and for months, they were still arresting people, even at the end of the
day. They are prosecutors sending them to jail.
Yes, to jail. See what has happened in the UK recently.
So, you can protest, but that is even where we copied democracy, all of our system of government from. You have to even apply for to police or law enforcement.
I mean, in Nigeria, it's not necessary you apply.
And you will be given a particular place where you will do your protest. People go to in front of White House. Okay, I was in Washington in April for a conference organized by Princeton University on sovereign debt. So after the session, so two of my friends living in America came around. Okay, let's just go out, let's go and get something to eat. So one of them said we should just take a stroll towards White House. So I was telling one of them who came from Nigeria to join us that each time I've gone to White House, there's always a protest. There's always one group or the other is always raising
an issue,
placard, whether it is on climate change or Palestinian issue or not any matter. So that I was telling my friend that by the time we get to White House, you will see people carry placard that I could bet. So when we got there, talk about you said so. So this gives credence to the fact that people are free to protest, but you do it in a orderly manner, in a way that doesn't disrupt
the lives of other citizens,
or create anarchy or lead to breakdown of law and order. And I think that was essentially what the government did in Nigeria to make sure that I remember ministers, especially Minister of Information, SGF, and other senior officials of government coming out to say government wasn't against protest. But government will definitely be against breakdown of law and order.
I mean, there's a section in the Constitution that empowers, law enforcement to actually act.
There is a Supreme Court judgment on that, that government has a duty to ensure public safety, and that where it's a matter between law and order, the state has a responsibility to ensure that there's no breakdown of law and order. So freedom, and I'm saying that a Supreme Court judgment, that the freedom of citizens as entrenched
In
in
the
the Constitution
Constitution.
can be abridged
Where there's a breakdown.
when there's going to be a breakdown of law and order. I think we need to be clear about that.
I mean, Mr. President is a true Democrat. It was okay. He said he kept mentioning it in every meeting that see. Nigerians have that right to exercise their constitutionally guaranteed.
He didn't miss word with that. He himself was a leader of protest. So even as a governor, as a leader of opposition, but when people were saying that, but he protested. Yes, he did, but he didn't
lead to anarchy.
He came out himself. He didn't send somebody's child or daughter or son to go and protest while
he's sitting down.
He's sitting down, or maybe you are taking off to somewhere around the world. Every time he needed to, he came out. They were circulating.
So there was that personal responsibility on him.
Yeah.
To ensure that the people he was leading didn't, engage in any breakdown of law.
I remember. So there was a picture of him, former President Buhari, and some other political leaders who protested, I think against against third term in 2007, and even in 2011 towards election and all of that. So really, I don't think the president will ever be against the right of citizens to protest.
Anyone. And then, because I'm also thinking, a lot of people said the president did not address the lot of issues that the protesters made. And I believe that to be, false.
No, of course he did. He addressed it.
And if most of people made mention about food security, and if there's anything, I know food security is one area that we've done so much in, from, giving inputs, fertilizers, seedlings, agricultural extension services and other things to farmers across the country, to even setting up interventions to help drive down costs of certain commodities. And more recently, the Customs this week released the guidelines, and Ministry of Finance, the guidelines for, the imports of food items into Nigeria, for the first 6 months of this intervention. And all these were in the president's speech. I also know he said he was speaking to state governors, that for everything, in order to get, I think, about 10 million hectares of farmland.
Because That's the target.
Because Nigerians also need to understand the law. By virtue of the Land Use Act and the Supreme Court's judgment, the land belongs to the state. So it's only the state that can appropriate land for such a purpose.
And really, we must also salute some of the state governors, some of the state governments that are doing well in terms of food and agricultural production. I know Niger State is cultivating about 1 million hectares of land. Jigawa, Kebbi, Kwara, even Lagos, that doesn't even have so much land. Lagos bought thousands of hectares of land in Abuja, in Ogun, and 2 other states in the north.
And are supporting some other, so that they can get the
commodity. The largest rice mill in West Africa today is in Lagos, in Mota. So really, I think some of the states are pulling their weight.
I hope we see more collaboration like that between states.
Yeah.
You don't have to have everything within your states. You can share services. Oh, I have the money, or I have the people. This is their greatest needs. You can produce this. Why don't you collaborate? And
I know that the Southwest governors met sometimes last month under the Southwest Governors Forum. I think that meeting, Lagos State Governor or Governor Makinde that hosted it, where they decided, really, about 6 billion naira worth of food is consumed every day in Lagos State. It has been established and empirically verified that about 6 billion naira worth of food is consumed every day in Lagos. So Lagos alone is a captive market. So imagine if Ekiti, I'm from Ekiti State. I grew up in Ekiti knowing that there's the rice we call Ibimo rice, very nutritious. Imagine if Ekiti is targeting selling just meeting 10%
of that market
of that market every day through whether producing yam or rice. Imagine Oyo or Ogun supplying, producing the poultry or the meat. So it's a huge economy for the Southwest, Lagos market alone. You are not even talking about even the local market in each state. So really, of course, the current Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Bagudu,
H.M. Bagudu,
when he was governor of Kebbi State, partnered with Lagos State
for rice,
the idea of lake rice. So, and I think it was that idea that led to Lagos setting up Immortal Rice. So Kebbi was supposed to be supplying the paddy. So there's just too many opportunities
at the subnational level, without even the federal government's involvement.
I was telling a friend that in fact, the 50 states of America, you know what each state is known for in terms of their comparative advantage. The economy of Michigan is built around automobile. California, IT. Nevada, is in Nevada, the state where there is where they do
the canyons,
where they do have a lot of casinos and entertainment.
Yes, Nevada, Las Vegas.
Nevada. They do their economy around entertainment, around tourism,
around a single street, one street.
Because they didn't have any natural resources. In the desert. They just we don't have anything. We either float or we either sink or swim. So they had to invent something. So they built their own economy around gambling, entertainment, hospitality. Today, the economy of Nevada is probably bigger than many African countries put together. So our states need to begin to look at their comparative advantages and begin to build on it. Imagine if all the South states build economy around hydrocarbon, which is their comparative advantage. Imagine northern state building their economy around agriculture and commodity in terms of processing, value addition. Then the state with solid minerals building that comparative advantage and around those minerals. And so our economy will explode within a decade. So, and again, the president is focused on all of these areas.
Yep, 3 trillion economy.
It's focused on them. And especially in the area of solid minerals, I think I want to give kudos to Minister of Solid Minerals, Dr. Dele Alaki, sanitizing that space, coming up with new regulations, and even changing the law. Now, I remember the last time he came with some investors to see the president. The president gave a marching order that going forward, raw solid minerals will no longer be exported out of Nigeria.
At least one level of value addition.
Beneficiation. There must be value addition. And as a corollary to that, lithium plants, about 2 or 3, in the last 1 year, have been set up in Nasarawa State. And I know 1 or 2 other states where such investments are.
And value addition, you see, it spreads across different sectors or industries. Even agric, the cassava that we use for gari, they use it for starch, for industrial purposes, pharmaceuticals, and ethanol, for power, and even in the foods and beverages industry. So these things we need to look at it. And you look at iron ore, a lot of states in the middle belt are sitting on iron ore. Yes, we don't even have a steel industry that we can boast of for now. But something as little as mining the iron ore, coking and beneficiation, one level, per ton, you add about $60, from about $120 to $180. And then for every level of value addition that you grow to up to medical grade steel, you can be looking at $8,000 per ton. That is the benefit of beneficiation and value addition.
And we have seen that happening in cement.
The cement industry.
With companies like Bua,
Dangote, and the rest. Even recently, a new one just Manga Cement.
Manga Cement. Yes. and the other one in elephant, people producing elephant cement.
Lafarge.
Lafarge. So I think if what happened to the cement sector in the last 15, 20 years begins to happen in other areas, the economy will explode.
You know, there's this saying that if you look at Nigeria as a country and what we are making now, you know, from crude oil, if you invest in solid minerals, value addition across the value chain and everything, Nigeria will be 4 times as big. But if you do that same investment in agriculture, because we have arable land,
millions, you know, about 32 million hectares.
You know, a lot of it, and fertile land. You know, also, if we invest that same energy in agricultural space, which is why I encourage a lot of young people to go to agriculture, not just in the aggregation space alone, actual production and adding value.
And processing.
If you process, you know, there's the potential to do 4 times what you earn from either solid minerals and, you know, what we're doing as a good economy.
Eat every day.
Look at cocoa. You know, you have 80% of the world's cocoa comes from the West African region.
And a ton is now 800,000.
Yes, but guess what? This is an almost 200 billion. This is an almost $200 billion industry, but Africa gets less than 20%
because we take
of that industry, because we export the raw materials, the raw goods, and we buy the chocolates. The biggest countries, you know, who earn from the cocoa industry are, you know, Western European countries and some East, Middle East, Far Eastern countries, simply because they are adding value to what. So whether it's gum arabic, your shea butter, whatever, just look at the entire value chain. Provide what people can eat locally, and then start looking at export markets. A lot of people say, oh, the current exchange rate is bad for us. But countries like Thailand, countries like Vietnam, with multiples what our exchange rate is currently, just by focusing, Vietnam use rice, you know, to do it, agricultural products, you know, to just move from a backward country to, you know, a developing economy. Simply, and that today both countries are one of the fastest growing economies in the world, simply by focusing on value addition across agriculture, manufacturing, you know, and service industries. And we can do it in Nigeria.
The good thing is we have a president who understands business, who is pro-business, who understand numbers, and is committed to making sure that this economy becomes more productive. It can create the right quality job that our young
incentives
our young people need, and a way of also unbundling the economy and opening it up more for investment, to make it more productive.
I mean, that
was why he set up the Tope Ajayi Presidential Committee on Tax and Fiscal Policy Reform, because the president has also said that there are fiscal issues and tax issues that are inhibiting investment and growth. So all of these issues are being tackled. So the good thing for me is we have a president who understands the issues, and you solve a problem when you recognize them. So he recognizes this problem, is solving them, and is bringing people who can help him to deliver.
I mean, for me, I know, you know, this issue of taxes, you know, I've heard people give different takes. But if there's one thing President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has been consistent about, is that we do not necessarily need to increase the tax burdens on Nigerians. Just widen the net. Because currently today, Nigeria has one of the lowest tax to GDP ratio in the whole of Africa. Even smaller countries more people are paying taxes, fulfilling their obligations.
Even those who are paying taxes in Nigeria, are they paying the right taxes?
The right taxes. So but the good thing is, we are going to see from the Taiwo Oyedele-led committee, taxes are being reduced. Because
so business owners to bring all the tax under single digit.
Yes.
From like almost 200 taxes that are paid
across all
the tiers of government. So they want to bring it under single basket. Max 9 to 10 taxes.
Okay.
So they are working out all the details, negotiating, meeting with the government, local government, and all the authorities. we are
Because
hoping
that
that before the end of the
would be
year.
important, you know, because you say, in as much as, yes, government is there to ensure equity across everyone, you know, I do feel sometimes, I'm coming from the private sector, so before my salary gets to me, then all your taxes are deducted at source. But I know a lot of people have also complained that, oh, they're basically bearing the burden for the entire country. It's a collective responsibility to pay taxes to the state.
It's a
But
duty and obligation.
But at the same time, the state also has an obligation to the people,
Of course.
you know, to use those taxes responsibly. And that is, there's a lot of, we need to tell ourselves the truth. I know, yes, we work for the government, but people need to also know that we recognize that there's a trust deficit between the government and the people. And that is a major issue for people.
And the good thing is, when people begin to see better service delivery, when people begin to see that people in leadership, especially in public leadership, begin to show more sufficient understanding of the psyche of
And
the
empathy.
people, and show more empathy, then people will be again. Let us also take this brings me to we were all living in Lagos before we came to Abuja. Look at, because of the reform that started with our current president when he was governor, he was able to clean up the system in Lagos, put all the reforms in place, did a lot across sector. President Tinubu has gone to Lagos State, restored public confidence in public health system, healthcare system, and public education.
That's true. That's true. I am a beneficiary of President Tinubu's public education scheme. I went to Lagos State Model College, and I remember I was paying 3,500 naira as my school fees.
Yeah.
Remember, I'm the first person in my family to go to public education. And that was strange.
He started paying.
NECO, I did it for free. So thank you very much, Mr. President.
So he brought that in. He revamped Lagos Teaching Hospital. We call it Ayike House. Then Lagos General Hospital, which now is Teaching Hospital too. Then when people began to see that, come on, then you will see that this always a board sign. Taxpayers' money in action.
Yes, I remember.
So taxpayers' money in action. So people, they were fixing the road, doing major infrastructure. Then you see that small A-board sign, taxpayers' money in action. People now began to have that consciousness that, so our tax is working for us then. And
you could see people in security, because I remember then you used to have a lot of, security. There was no night to know of robberies, gunshots.
So we set up RRS, Rapid Response Squad. Then Governor Fashoda came,
expanded
and elevated governance. Because of course it was easier for him or smoother for him because the foundation
had been laid in collaboration with the legislature.
Yeah, so that is the issue. So then the quantum of tax and revenue collected by Lagos State government increased. So people were now willing to pay more. Even those that were not even paying taxes.
Because they could see and feel the benefits.
Going to tax offices to do self-assessment. I remember my private business. I told my staff that we will not be paying tax. So we carry ourselves to
LRS.
I even got a tax consultant to come and help us handle all those matters. And my staff, then we were about 30. They were happy. And I said, it's your civic responsibility. It's your obligation. So you don't have a right to demand for certain things from government. You don't have a right to demand for good roads, or good healthcare, or good education if you're not paying your tax. As little as we are able to pay them, let everybody pay tax. It's a civic obligation. So really, I also believe that when the more people see better service delivery at the 3 levels of government, federal, state, and local government, people will have better trust and stronger faith in
I mean,
public
that's
life.
why this local government Supreme Court judgment was very, very instructive. Now you can, hold your local government representatives to account. Because of that veil that was there before, many people did not care about local government elections in some states, at the very least. Because they didn't feel it had any impact
On their life.
on their lives.
That's why everybody's always shouting federal government.
Federal government, federal government, federal
Two
government.
layers of government before federal government.
So now that these local governments are going to be getting their allocations from the federal the FAC accounts directly to themselves, people need to start holding each and every level of government accountable. But to hold them accountable, you need to understand what each level of government
Their responsibilities
is supposed to do, because that's the knowledge gap. A lot of people pile issues on the federal government because they don't understand that, see, there are certain things that is your local government that is meant to do. There are certain things that is your state government that are meant to do and has the responsibility for. There are certain things that the federal government should do. It's in the exclusive and concurrent lists in the Constitution, as enshrined by the Constitution. So, I mean, we also have a lot of work to do to keep educating the public, whether it's us in the presidency or the agencies of government like NOA, FRC, and the Ministry of Information, or NT and Co. Everybody needs to put their hands together to educate. And even when we are, maybe hampered in doing our duties, there's nothing that stops you as a regular Nigerian from educating
Again, it also brings again to the fore the role of the media, independent media, whether public media or independent media. The media must help the citizen to understand governance better.
Their rights, their roles, their responsibilities.
So the media must educate. We must properly, people need to be equipped with the right information.
True.
So people always talk about holding government accountable. Like you said, if you don't know your right or what
the government is
supposed to do, so who are you going to hold accountable? Accountability flows from having the right information,
which is something that is lacking in this day of misinformation, fake news, and disinformation.
So I mean, like somebody made a post. Was it this guy that one of the, I think there's a video that has been circulating in the last 48 hours. That one of the Channels TV presenters, the early morning show now.
Yes.
The main anchor, I've forgotten his name now, saying, telling people what should be the responsibilities of local government and what the kind of things they should demand from their local government. That is a beautiful, it's about 2 minutes video. That is a beautiful, in fact, the guy went to the street, to neighborhood, to let people know that sanitation, waste management is a duty of local government. Some Trumpsy road is a duty of local government. Market, duty. Street light. So with that 2 minute video, and I know it has really gone viral, imagine if there are thousands of videos like that. Imagine if some of the airtime on radio and on television
is dedicated
to civic education. It will help.
I agree.
It will help. But again, it's always
it's a government must do everything kind of.
No, the thing is, it's a continuous education, and government will continue to do what it needs to do. And as public information managers, we continue to do our best, continue to put the right narrative, and continue to let people know that they have a president who thinks highly of them, who is working for them every day,
who is willing to listen
to their concerns and actually working to address those concerns.
So thank you very much. Before we end, this is a question from me to you. I know I'm this fellow discussant here, but I need to ask you a question. What's your take on disinformation and misinformation? And I'll use a pressing issue that's come on recently to preface my question. There was this influencer from the north, it does these skit videos, Yes. Recently, someone made a statement that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu owned a blending plant, for cruise in Malta. And they also roped in a dual-listed company, owned by an extended family member of the president, as the one that was handling it and all that. Interestingly enough, this company came out. They are listed on the Johannesburg and Lagos Stock Exchange, or Nigerian Stock Exchange, sorry. And they said they had nothing to do with this. They wrote a disclaimer, a public disclaimer. But that video came after and still insisted on that, with no facts, no evidence, other than mere hearsay. Day before yesterday or so, it finally came out that this is actually a legitimate, business entity by completely different sets of people, which predated even the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration. But I have not seen media houses who carry these false narratives actually come out to set the facts straight. I've not seen people, who heaped, blame, who said a lot of things to malign these people, come out to lay the facts as they are. So when do we start to see people take responsibility for, because even on normal people, you're seeing people commit suicide. You hear of it a lot of times based on things that are said or wrong information. People are led to depression, mental health issues as a result of unchecked misinformation and disinformation.
I know, of course, governance and public leadership is becoming extremely difficult in the age of social media. I wrote an article like 5 years ago, Leadership in the Age of Social Media. With virality, false information, misinformation, can set a whole country
ablaze,
on fire. So, what is the responsibility of the media, especially the mainstream media, is to fact check. In fact, even
but these days you see a lot of media houses, just someone brings out a rumor online and it makes it to the front pages of.
Again, it means there's a level of behavior or ethical standard that is expected of a mainstream media, where you have gatekeeping role. It's not social media that is democratized. Everybody has an opinion. But a former mainstream media organization, news goes through processing. That is the gatekeeping role. Of course, like you said earlier, the tendency to grab headline now
and just put it under the cloud of, is yet to be confirmed, or anonymity.
So it's really tough. Again, the big tech are also being called to account now. There are a lot of public hearings in European Parliament, in US, put a lot of sanctions, telling the big tech.
They have a responsibility to safeguard
public sanity. People can't just be using your platform to spread fake news, and you are permitting such without check. So I think some of them are already building in system, mechanism, and algorithm to quickly detect some of these things, and they flag it or they take it out. So more needs to be done. But in terms of regulation, I noticed that most Nigerians that were opposed to social media regulation, they were very vociferous against social media regulation 3, 4, 5 years ago when it was
are beginning to shift ground.
Some of them have become victims. So they are now, I've seen the major shift. I see some of them now advocating that social media should be regulated, it shouldn't be left unchecked.
So I think on that, and I'll say this because I'm also, the SSA to the President on digital communications. I think the major issue is the approach to this regulation. I'm sorry that I cut you short. You see, every time they have brought up regulations like that, it is couched in another light because the drafters of those bills had failed to do proper awareness as to why that bill was important. Yeah. And Nigeria, once you leave things to the public to decide, it can be just one thing.
You play cash up.
And then it's takes away from the real importance of the bill. I mean, almost all the Western countries have some form of regulation with regards to speech online.
Hate speech.
You know, a lot of them have this sort of regulations in the Middle East, in Africa, autocratic, democratic regimes, they all have it. Because at the end of the day,
even UK was retweeting what is wrong now. You are liable.
You're liable.
So don't say
because at the end of the day, despite the fact that it's a platform for freedom of expression of oneself and speech and all that, it still does not take away, you know, your individual responsibility to what you post. And I mean, that's for the legal and for the law courts to decide, but you know, I keep saying it, everybody must have some level of personal responsibility to what they post out. You know, what you think is a harmless post here can have a ripple effect on the general public, on the general populace, and lead to, you know, unintended consequences for many other people.
No, I read a piece in India, a police district took it upon one of the like a DPO
Yes.
of in a rural area. There was a viral video of a young lady that circulated within the neighborhood, and maybe it has to do with a sexual relationship or whatever. So that's a fake news. Maybe that video was manipulated,
Yeah.
and it's the young girl had to go and committed suicide.
Wow.
So the district police officer in India, in that community or in that area, now started a campaign around dissemination of fake news. Like Rati said, he made the people to know the danger, using that incident as a springboard. And then now did a kind of public enlightenment campaign, how to know a fake material. And again, asking people to take responsibility on what, before they share anything, what purpose will it serve if you don't share this thing? Or if you share this thing,
That's important. If I share this, what purpose is this going to serve?
So people must also exercise caution or restraint. It's not everything you see on your phone you share. First of all, ask yourself, what is the value of this content I want to share? Will it edify? Will it create chaos? Will it lead to harmony and public peace and order? If you can't satisfy those basic answers, satisfying to yourself, then delete. So again, big tech has the big tech companies have a role to play in all of this, and even as an individual, you must take responsibility.
Thank you very much. I love the fact that these conversations, as with every one of this, is totally unscripted.
Yeah.
And we're just speaking based on our knowledge, you know, and our vantage position of being in government, and also having been out of government. You have owned a business, I've worked in the private sector all my life. And I do hope that a lot of Nigerians will see this as, you know, our own little contribution to broadening the discourse, broadening national conversations. It's not propaganda.
Yeah, I think what we need to do going forward is to formalize this and turn it into a regular.
I'm not sitting down with you every week, having this kind of, you know, where we haven't even thought about it and
throw more light on government programs, activities, and policies.
Because Nigerians need to know. I would say it's, yes, I agree with a lot of Nigerians. It's been challenging breaking through the noise.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money being pumped into disinformation. Yeah, it might serve some purposes for political opposition, but there's a lot we can do better.
So, let's roll.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.